Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. Hello, my ragtime gal. Send me a kiss by wire. Baby, my heart's on fire. If you refuse me, honey, you lose me. Then you'll be left alone. Oh, baby, telephone and tell me I'm your own.
If you're wondering, this song has been in my head all day long. The little guy in the back of my head will not stop singing it, so I just wanted to share it with you guys. We thank you for being here. You're listening to Ripon, Common Sense Radio. Let's get this party started.
Unlocked and into the dark. Some things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever Oh, what a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion? I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
Ripon Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests, are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Ripon Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only. Enjoy.
Hello. This is My Life DIY, and
hi, this is JoJo.
Hi, my name is Oz.
Hey everybody, it's AJ the Ripon Rabbit.
This is Cynthia Sue Larson.
This is your man Meta, aka Propagate This Light.
And you're now listening
to Dark Wolf's Den.
The Dark Wolf's Den Show on Ripon Common Sense Radio.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
Are ghosts real?
We had 1,000 hours of continuous communication with the spirit world.
Does time travel actually exist?
The laws of physics seem to be compatible with time machines.
You know, sometimes I wonder about reincarnation. Don't you?
A 4-year-old boy in Adelaide, Australia, has told his parents that he used to be Britain's Princess Diana.
What would happen if the world found out that aliens were real?
I didn't say disclosure would be easy, but what is the alternative?
To establish a space force as the 6th branch of the armed forces.
We have so many questions and yet so little time, so to have you here, the pleasure is all mine.
Coming to you from a secret mountain cave, hidden deep within the Idaho wilderness. This is the Dark Wolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and we are broadcasting live across the multiverse from a secret mountain cave hidden high up in the beautifully snow-covered peaks of the Idaho mountains. That's right. We're ripping through the electromagnetic soup, tearing through the atmosphere, and tunneling away into your radio like a quantum particle. This is the Dark Wolf's Den Show for Wednesday, April 21st, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are discussing the UFO topic, but a very specialized portion of it, the USOs, the Unidentified Submerged Objects. That's right. There's been a lot of case files of these, and it makes you wonder if something isn't going on below the waters of our world. We'll get into all that and more here in just a moment, but first, today in history. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I don't always get lucky enough to find a topic and a Today in History to match, so I found one that is just as special. Check this out, ladies and gentlemen. On this day in 1836, the territory of Wisconsin was created. That's right. For those that don't know, listening worldwide, our flagship station for Ripon Common Sense Radio is in Ripon, Wisconsin. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, and that is today's Today in History. And as you guys know, if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times, my favorite segment of this whole show is the Today in History. I absolutely love the Today in Histories. And I try to do something that kind of it means something to us here, right? It's not just a random fact, it's a fact that actually has meaning here on the show. And as you know, as we go along, it's a staple in all the episodes. It's something that's going to be there no matter what. And when it comes to paranormal research, there's a staple also, and that is, of course, ufology. And I've studied ufology for a good portion of 28 years. And there's one or two things that have always just really intrigued me more so than most of the other parts of the UFO phenomenon. Not to say that the other parts aren't all absolutely amazingly, insanely incredible, but there's this one or two pieces that have always just really bothered me. Like hotspots. Hotspots in ufology, if you don't know, means areas where you get large amounts of sightings at a time. And if they last long enough, they can turn into what's called a flap. But one thing I noticed early on in UFO research. Of course, for those that don't know, I always try to adopt scientific methods for studying paranormal. I try to marry the two, if you will. So, thinking on a logical scientific basis, one of the things you think is, well, can you plot the areas where these hotspots are occurring? And I found a really odd bit of information when it came to these hotspots. I noticed that it was around areas like the Great Lakes, the areas around Florida and Texas, California, New York. Does anybody else know what is connected in all of these places? What is the one single trend that goes across all of the places I just mentioned, from the Great Lakes to New York to Florida to Texas to California? What is the one thing they all have in common? Well, if you aren't sure, I'll go ahead and give you a freebie on this one. It's water. That's all around large bodies of water. Now, yes, the argument can be made that, Jerry, 70% of the earth is water. The chances are more so than not that something's going to happen around the water. That's fair. But look at the hotspots. What are the odds that all the UFO hotspots would be right on the coasts of the water, or the water areas, the Great Lakes, New York and New England area, Florida and the Gulf Shores and the Gulf Breeze sightings? The Texas was a big hotspot for a long time. California has always been a major hotspot. Washington also has its fair number of reports, as well as Oregon. Now, not to say the rest of the country don't see UFOs, but this is where the hotspots seem to be. And I always long theorized that there was something to do with water, and the reason these UFOs were always around these bodies of water. Little did I know it went much further than what I originally theorized. And come to find out, there were plenty of case files that seen unidentified objects going into or coming out of these large bodies of water. So they were no longer just unidentified flying objects. They were now also unidentified submerged objects.
When we think of other life forms visiting Earth, we all think of the thousands of UFOs that have been reported, and the many people who claim to have been abducted by unidentified objects from above. But not all sightings happen from the sky. There are some interesting stories of crafts being spotted in the ocean. These are called unidentified submerged objects, and with so much of Earth being made up of water, it makes sense that if another life form has ever visited, why wouldn't they land in the ocean? After all, if they had the technology to reach Earth in the first place, then their crafts would most likely be able to do so.
Oh, without question, if they had the ability to get through space or dimensional rifts or however they got here, then surely the craft would have no problem going in and out of the water. And perhaps they've been here so long they've even built bases underwater, right? But we are definitely getting way ahead of ourselves. Let's see what kind of case files we can pull up on this particular topic.
Catalina Island, Los Angeles, on April 15th, 1966.
Which means this case file is 55 years old as of last week.
An object with no tail and no visible means of propulsion was seen flying at speeds from 130 to 170 miles per hour and made no sound at all.
An object that even to this day no military in the world that we know of has in its arsenal.
It was filmed by a man called Lehman Hansen, who at the time was working for the United States Navy. Since then, these objects have been witnessed on numerous occasions flying in and out of the water, and the name given to these objects was USOs, Unidentified Submerged Objects.
And we have a case file later coming up from 1963, so it seems in the 60s is when these things began to surface.
On January the 26th, 1980, a pilot called Noah Felice and his cousin were flying their Piper Cherokee around the Catalina Channel when they spotted an object in the water with someone or something standing on it. Then the object shot out a beam of light that first paralyzed the instruments, and then a second beam forced it to crash into the sea.
I am not aware of any technology that we had in 1966 that could be shot at a plane to stop its gear from working altogether, let alone to bring it down that easily.
Unfortunately, his cousin was killed, whilst Noah, who at this stage claimed he must have been dead underwater for at least 15 minutes, found he had somehow escaped with relatively minor injuries, and believes whoever was in the USO had rescued him and brought him back to life.
This one surprisingly reminds me of the Travis Walton case, and how that was a accidental discharge, or what seemed to be, and they seem to have abducted him to try to actually help him or save his life. And it seems the same case here, that it could have been some type of accidental discharge, and again they were able to save at least one person. That is an assumption based on the case file that we were just presented with, but that being one of the earliest case files, if not the earliest, there are many, many more.
Shag Harbour, Nova Scotia.
And this is another well-known USO case file.
On the night of October the 4th, at about 11:20 p.m. 1967, several people reported seeing a 60-foot-long lit object that later descended into the water, causing some people to panic, believing it was an aircraft crashing into the sea.
As we would all logically think at the time, right?
It was described as having had several orange glowing lights and eventually sunk, leaving behind a trail of yellow foam half a mile long. Fishing boats and the Coast Guard went out looking for survivors. However, nothing was ever found. The military sent out divers who followed up with an extensive search. When more information came to light, it was found that the object was first spotted on radar coming out of Siberia.
So it's verified on radar in Siberia, which, by the way, has more than its fair share of ufology accounts.
After crashing into the harbour, it then travelled underwater up the coast to Shelbourne, where it came to rest on a submarine magnetic detection grid, and was supposedly joined by a second vehicle. Military ships were anchored there for a week in an attempt to recover the object.
Well, it seems that the military took this case quite seriously then.
One diver said that after witnessing the object, claimed it was not of planet Earth.
Now that's an interesting description to use for the object, don't you think?
Other military witnesses also claimed there were two objects, with one trying to assist the other. On October the 11th, the military suddenly called off the search, where later that evening an object was seen departing the area. A book was written about the incident called Dark Object by Don Ledger and Dick Stiles.
So if you are interested in finding more information on that case, definitely check out that book. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and play the name of the book and the author one more time.
A book was written about the incident called Dark Object by Don Ledger and Dick Stiles.
And these case files occur all across the world. It isn't limited to just one continent, one area, or even one hemisphere.
Malta, 1971. In November 1971, Maltese fisherman Paolo Zamet and his crew were about 20 miles out to sea south of Malta when they spotted a large dark object floating on the water about 900 feet away and believed it to be a black submarine.
Now, this is two different case files we've come across so far where the object is floating right atop of the water.
A very bright light then flashed out from the object, causing them to shield their eyes. But when they looked back, they saw a number of small humanoid men, each about the height of a 10-year-old child, walking about on top of the object.
I gotta say, in all the case files I've run across over the years, this is the first one I've found that has some type of teleporter technology. Because, I mean, he said there was a flash of bright light, and then they were there, right?
Some of the men were wearing what appeared to be belts attached to tools or some other equipment. Then after a few minutes, the figures jumped through an opening in the object's hull and disappeared. There was then a bright flash, causing the fishermen to look away. And when they looked back, the object had suddenly vanished.
And yet there's that bright flash again when they disappear, almost once again like a teleporter technology, and when they look back, the whole object had vanished. And remember how I mentioned a moment ago that there are quite a few case files out of Siberia? Well, here is another one.
Lake Baikal, Siberia, on the 17th of April 1987.
And this case file just turned 34 years old last week.
Valery Ritenstov describes that at about 12:20 a.m., a flying saucer appeared approximately 150 meters above him, and from the center of the object was a phosphorescent purple ray. At the edges of the object were yellow portals, and the diameter of the object was about 70 meters, and it was silent.
For those that don't know, portholes are nothing more than a fancy word for windows on a ship.
Then the object slid smoothly away and sailed along the shore of the bay.
And there's been even more recent sightings of this object.
On the 9th of July 2009, at about 10 p.m., Sergei Konichinik and his son were on their balcony when suddenly there appeared two glowing balls with a yellow core and an orange-red surround hovering over the water.
And then another one yet the very next year.
In July 2010, Nikita Tomin describes an object with a shining green light flying above the lakeside and then above him. Vyacheslav Lalevich was on a yacht on the lake when a huge shining disc about 500 to 700 meters in diameter appeared below the surface and glowed for about 3 minutes, lighting up the yacht before shooting into the sky.
Now, so far we have heard of stories of crafts being either on the water or going into the water, but this one was spotted in the water and came up into the sky.
Oleg Chichelin was also on a boat training students when they saw a glowing ball floating on the water that started to slowly fade, then turn into a red ball. For a while the red ball lay on the water, but then gradually sunk under the water.
The interesting thing about this case was, again, the amount of witnesses involved.
In 1982, 7 military divers reported to have come across aliens under Lake Baikal.
All of these, once again, happening around Lake Baikal. And this is military divers making this particular report.
Alexei Tivinyenko said at a depth of 50 meters, they met swimmers around 3 meters tall, dressed in tight-fitting silvery suits. They did not have any scuba or other devices, just helmets on their heads.
Now, that puts a whole new twist on all the evidence that we've seen so far, at least just on Lake Baikal, right? All the different sightings that have gone in and out of the lake, that's one thing. But when the divers suggested they seen aliens and nothing short of aliens underneath the water, it makes you wonder if perhaps the reason they're going in and out of the water and the reason that the hot spots have been so frequent around bodies of water is perhaps they've got bases underneath there, right? Or some type of habitation underneath the waters of this world. And it's not a strange idea. Again, over 70% of the earth is water. And to think that a creature couldn't have evolved from water and still be smart, well, we have the octopus here on earth. I think if given the chance, they could probably build a rocket. And I don't even say that facetiously. So what if there was a species that was partially aquatic and could partially survive in the air? Then they would be able to live in either environment, right? Perhaps that is the kind of species that has taken to inhabiting the oceans of this world.
Puerto Rico, 1963. One of the most famous incidences happened in March 1963 involving USS Wasp aircraft carrier off Puerto Rico. Sonar picked up an object moving at 150 knots, 20,000 feet below. The object would propel to impossible speeds, then stop for a while as the Navy would catch up.
We hear many reports from military pilots that UFOs seem to be playing cat and mouse with them. It seems that the ones on the water seems to be doing the same thing.
For 4 days, the fleet tracked the unknown object, recording its speed. There is nothing in any naval inventory anywhere in the world that can approach anything remotely that speed then or now.
But phenomenal speed was not the only trick that this craft had up its sleeve.
The object descended to a depth of 27,000 feet.
Which is a feat that most definitely the craft made in 1963 could not accomplish, and here's why.
The pressures down there are so vast that they would crush any vessel that went down that deep.
It would have turned even the best submarine at the time into nothing more than a ball of metal.
13 captains would enter the incident in their ship's logs.
So this was also very well documented amongst a variety of ship captains. And I happen to know, like Siberia, Puerto Rico is also a very, very popular place for both UFO and USO sightings.
A great deal of the strange activity around the island has centered on the area known as El Yunque. Jose Orlando Goles, who works for the Puerto Rican government, lives close to El Yunque. He says many people have seen UFOs flying over the water close to the surface, he said. One evening at around 1 a.m, we saw an object with many coloured lights flying next to the sea just over the surface. It seemed to be dark underneath and had lights, mostly red and blue. Then it angled and moved upwards. It made a humming sound and seemed to head in the direction of El Yunque.
That humming sound I have heard reported in more than one UFO close encounter case file.
The number of UFO sightings over the waters of the Triangle, as well as USOs below, has been a constant since the time of Columbus.
That's right. Some of the earliest people to sail the oceans of the world were reporting these USOs and UFOs.
The early sailors and explorers called the underwater disturbances wheels of light.
Which sounds like the interpretation of a disc underwater.
UFOs have been seen from ships, from shore, and from experienced pilots with a specific concentration near and on Puerto Rico. There has been a tremendous surge of UFO sightings in Puerto Rico since the early 1990s, and for many of the Puerto Rican witnesses, they're absolutely convinced that there's some sort of massive futuristic installation deep below Puerto Rico, under the ocean bed.
And that's what the evidence is seeming to start to suggest, that there is some type of base around these areas. Puerto Rico, like I said, being a very, very popular hotspot in the last 20 or 30 years, and it has not slowed down from the way that I understand it. I've got some friends that are from Puerto Rico. Larry, if you're listening, buddy, I'd love to hear from you. Know if you've got any experiences down there, because we know that Puerto Rico, once again, has been a very, very heavy hotspot. Even back in my early days of ufology, in putting together these hotspots on the map, Puerto Rico definitely showed up. Lake Baikal in Russia is interesting because, once again, it's a body of water. And you've got these bodies of water all over the place. And it makes you wonder if perhaps there isn't alien bases or even human bases, right? Or human alien bases. Perhaps they're working together. That's the rumor we keep hearing, right? That the aliens are working with the governments of the world. Perhaps they've got a base off California. There's been a lot of sightings off the Californian coast. California, as a matter of fact, has been another major hotspot for as long as I can remember in ufology anyway. And then there's the Gulf Shores, or was it Gulf Breeze or Gulf Shores? I think it was Gulf Breeze, actually. Sightings down in Florida back in the 90s. That was a huge flap that happened in Hotspot. So why are these things being seen so much in and around the waters? Is it perhaps that they live in the waters, or are they just coming to visit and test things out? Perhaps they're just coming for a fishing trip, right? Perhaps they don't have good fishing on their planet. They know all the good spots that we don't know here on Earth. I don't know. It's an interesting thought, though, right? What would make an alien species travel so very far if they're traveling across the galaxy and trying to get to another planet just to hide in the water? Are they studying humans from the water, maybe? Are they studying the planet and the pollution and watching how we're killing ourselves from beneath? Or perhaps they're trying to find another home and slowly trying to take over from below, right? Well, we went over a variety of case files so far tonight, and it's been absolutely intriguing thus far. We've got a variety more of case files to go over in the second half. That's right, we've only began to scratch the surface of the amazing number of case files that have to do with unidentified submerged objects. I always want to say underwater, right? But unidentified submerged objects, and we'll get to all that here in the second half, but we got to go ahead and take a network break right here, ladies and gentlemen, so you stick around and we'll be right back after this message. Don't you touch that dial. That's right.
We got to stoke the fires and run off the men in black. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Ow! Your weekend has begun. Hi, everyone. It's AJ, the Ripon Rabbit. Are you enjoying the program so far? I know I am. If you are and you haven't done so already, please make sure to thumb up that video, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell. You'll get our notifications every time we go live. Now, I have to apologize. I did not get today's schedule in the email to you, so it will arrive tomorrow. You'll get a look ahead at the rest of the week. And with Jerry Hicks, tomorrow night he'll return again, Thursday, April 22nd, with the Third Man Factor. It's going to be an interesting show. I like unidentified submerged objects myself. Apparently, there was one that crashed off of the coast of Hawaii. Then I'll return Friday night, April 23rd, as we'll explore together a road trip of Route 66. Come along with me on the historical journey of Route 66. Then Saturday night we'll discuss social distancing, Ripon Rabbit Hole style. You'll want to tune in for that for sure. And we'll end out the weekend right together Sunday night with a look at science. That's right, we're going to explore all of the possibilities of today's modern age of science. That's a look at your weekend ahead. Like I said, I apologize. I was unable to get the schedule off of this morning. It just didn't happen. I will make sure to get it up and post it on Ripon Rabbit Hole and get it off to your email as soon as possible. But now at least you know a look ahead at the weekend. Can you believe it? It's already here. It's already begun. My goodness, the most extended weekends in radio. Before you know it, the weekend is over and the week begins. But that's what's really cool about our extended weekends, is that it makes your week go so short, right? Did your week fly by or what? I know mine did. I'm excited to spend the rest of the weekend together with you. We'll return now back again to Dark Wolf's Den Show with your host, Jerry Hicks, with tonight's Wednesday, April 21st, 2021, look at unidentified submerged objects. Oh man, I gotta get him the information about this one that crashed off of the coast of Hawaii. People said it was blue, and it just dove down into the ocean, and it submerged itself. Really wild stuff happened just this last week while we were away. You're listening to the Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, the Ripon Rabbit Hole.
This is My Life DIY, and
Hi, this is JoJo.
Hi, my name is Oz.
Hey everybody, it's AJ the Ripon Rabbit.
This is Cynthia Sue Larson.
This is your man Meta, aka Propagate This Light.
And you're now listening
to Dark Wolf's Den.
The Dark Wolf's Den Show on Ripon Common Sense Radio.
If you were meant to be controlled, you would have come with a remote, but you didn't. And that's why you listen to the Dark Wolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. And welcome back to the second half of the Dark Wolf's Den Show for Wednesday, April 21st, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are discussing USOs, that is Unidentified Submerged Objects. See, I almost said underwater again. Unidentified Submerged Objects. These are UFOs under the water, that's right. In the first half, we went over a number and variety of case files involving USOs, including a number of which that happened to do with Lake Baikal in Siberia. And then we ended the first half with the discussion on the USOs around Puerto Rico. But again, these are found all across the planet, from north to south, east to west, and every direction in between. Our next case file, as a matter of fact, comes to us from the nice frigid land of Norway.
Norwegian USO. In November 1972, there were reported sightings of a possible Russian U-boat travelling at high speeds in the Sognefjord in Norway that was disappearing below the surface. This was during the height of the Cold War, so the sightings were concerning enough for the Norwegian military, along with NATO forces, to participate in a 30-plus vessel 2-week surveillance of the area. Since the Sognefjord is the deepest fjord in Norway though, being up to 4,300 feet at its deepest point, there were plenty of places for this submarine to hide. However, the Norwegian Navy were well used to tracking Russian subs and using specialist equipment to try and force them to the surface. But this was something different. It wasn't something they were used to seeing, and despite the information remaining a secret, it was clear from the start that this was not a Russian U-boat, but a USO.
Remember, these are some highly trained and efficient military officials who are used to dealing with U-boats. This isn't some Joe Schmo off the street. These are well-trained military individuals. And this is only where the case file gets even more strange.
When they eventually located it, it surfaced and was described as a massive torpedo-shaped silent craft. The Navy desperately tried to fire at it, but it kept submerging. They even tried depth charges, but nothing was stopping it. In the end, they decided to block off the ford to force the craft into shallow water.
Which would probably work if this were a man-made craft.
10 days later, the craft was seen heading towards the southern tip of the ford. Then 15 minutes later, it was spotted again by 5 police officers further down on a small island.
Which, as we're going to hear in a minute, is very remarkable.
If this was the same craft, which is presumed it was, it would have had to have been travelling at 124 miles per hour. With the technology at that time, no submarine was capable of anywhere near that speed.
That, even underwater, is incredibly fast. I mean, think about it. Think of the drag that water puts on you. When you try to run in the water, it completely pushes against you with about the same amount of weight as you push against it with, right? Water is very, very tough. Okay, maybe not the same amount of weight, but you get the idea, right? Water exercising is a thing because it adds a good amount of resistance. So think about the amount of resistance added by the water, and this thing was still able to reach speeds that were absolutely unheard of at the time.
A couple of days later, the USO had finally been pushed into shallow water, and the Navy fired anti-submarine missiles at it. These were capable of causing a huge amount of damage, however, this craft carried on completely unscathed. It then disappeared from the Navy's radar and has never been seen again.
So no matter what they threw at this thing, it just bounced off it like, for lack of better terms, water off a duck.
This incident sounds very hard to believe, but although most of the information remains classified, we know it did happen. What is known, apart from everything I just said, is that during the 2-week surveillance and tracking of this USO, there were several reports of aircrafts experiencing malfunctions with their electronic equipment while flying over the Fords.
And as we know from a variety of ufology case files, there is an aspect of electromagnetic interference every time there is an object like this in an area.
Whatever was in that water in 1972 was not something the Norwegian Navy had come across before, and judging by their reaction, they recognized that this was not just a Russian sub, but something that even to this day is unexplained.
And it's one thing when you get a case file from a fisherman, and it's another thing when you get a case file from the Navy themselves, and that was from the Norwegian Navy. As we know, in America here, we've been getting a lot of case files recently from our own Navy, some quite amazing ones at that. I haven't seen any USOs yet. They've had a couple flying above the water, which again could be counted in the flap theory, but it definitely is not USOs that we've seen dipping in and out of the water from our own American Navy, at least not yet.
When we think of UFO reports, most of us think of the last few decades, but sightings go back hundreds of years, and that includes USOs. One of the most documented old-school USO sightings is that of the crew on board the Santa Maria and Pinta on October the 11th, 1492.
And in the first half, we briefly mentioned Columbus's experiences with USOs and UFOs, and now we're going to dig a little deeper into the stories of the expeditions of Columbus and the paranormal sightings that occurred.
It was first spotted by Christopher Columbus at around 10 p.m. in the Bahamas, who woke the others, who also confirmed what he was seeing. He wrote exactly what he saw in his journal, but the truth is that Columbus's original journal is long lost. Now, there are several interpretations of it with different accounts of what he saw, and they all do follow a similar theme. It's clear that Columbus and his crew saw something, and it was almost definitely a light of some description that moved up and down, reappearing and disappearing into the sea several times during the night.
Well, I can say that if it was a hallucination, it was a hallucination shared across all of Columbus's men. And if it was a mistaken image of, say, the moon on the water, once again, all of these sailors made the same mistake. Little odd.
Columbus was apparently convinced that it was a sign that land was close, and the light was from natives living on the island, although others on board disagreed.
And I'll give it to him, at least it is a semi-credible argument.
Columbus was right though, they were close to land. About 4 hours after the first sighting, the crew reached the empty island of Guanani in the Bahamas, the first land he sighted on his discovery of the New World, leading some to think that it was alien life checking out the island before he did. Others think it could have just been shooting stars or bioluminescent fish.
Or perhaps an alien civilization has been here on this planet living in our oceans a lot longer than we even would have thought about.
What makes this sighting so interesting is that it was so long ago, 1492. I doubt it would have even crossed the crew's mind that it could have been a craft from another dimension. After all, the technology for aircrafts or even lights as we know them was not even thought of at that time. So could this have been an early sighting of a USO that was bobbing in and out of the water near that island? I guess we'll never know for sure, but it's certainly an interesting historical story.
And one that, given today's context, would make a lot more sense with our understanding of USOs and ufology.
This USO sighting actually comes with some interesting footage, making it the most convincing in this video. It was recorded in April 2013 at the Rafael Hernandez Airport in Puerto Rico.
And yet again, we find another case file in Puerto Rico.
And was tracked by a thermal imaging camera on board a turboprop DHC-8 aircraft by crew from US Customs and Border Control.
Once again, you have a case file coming from an official government source.
The unidentified object appears to be traveling at great speed over land before plunging into the ocean and then re-emerging. By the end of the footage, the object appears to have either split in two or been joined by another craft.
And of course, that far underneath the depths of the ocean, they would probably think that they were very safe from prying eyes.
It's thought the footage is genuine, and it's claimed that shortly after takeoff, the crew of the DHC-8 noticed a reddish light out in the ocean. They became concerned as the control tower had not informed them of any incoming traffic. And after radioing the tower, they told them they had visuals on the object but did not know what it was. As it approached the DHC-8, its lights turned off, although it was still being tracked by the plane's thermal imaging equipment and the tower's radar.
Which I doubt that the object was actually aware of just based on its actions.
The object was said to be between 3 and 5 foot long and was averaging around 80 miles per hour. It travelled through the water for around half a mile before flying back out, and after flying around for a short while, it headed back over the ocean before finally submerging and disappearing.
That is an incredible speed to either be going into or out of the ocean at.
The official report on this incident is that the object could not be identified and displayed characteristics that cannot be explained. This, along with the amount of time that Homeland Security put into investigating this case, has led researchers to believe alien technology was responsible. As always, there are theories on what it could be, but most of these have been ruled out for various reasons. So there really is no explanation. This truly is an unidentified flying object, as well as being an unidentified submerged object caught on camera.
And yet another case file that comes with evidence. They say there's no evidence for these things. There's a lot of evidence if you're willing to actually look at it and accept it as such. And sometimes you get a case so amazing that even the news decides that it's important enough to take a look at. Check this out.
Officials from the Federal Aviation Administration say there were no aircraft incidents or accidents in this area Tuesday night, but multiple witnesses report seeing a large blue object fall out of the sky and into the ocean.
Something is in the sky.
And this report is coming to us from an NBC station in Hawaii. And Hawaii, of course, being another place that for a long time had a major UFO flap and was a hot spot for sightings for a long time. And the USOs, of course, is only par for the course around someplace like Hawaii, right? It's an island.
What is that?
This video was taken by Misitina Sape at 8:26 Tuesday night near Haleakala Avenue in Nanakuli. Not long after, a woman named Mariah spotted the same thing passing over Princess Kahanu Estates.
So we've already got multiple witnesses for the same object.
I look up, and then I was like, oh, started calling my husband then because we was all in the garage. I was like, hey, look up there. See what I see. They all said, yeah.
The 38-year-old says she's never really been a believer in UFOs, but the bright blue object had them so intrigued, they jumped in the car and started following it.
I also can sincerely appreciate the fact that this lady was a skeptic from the get-go. And I gotta say, I would do the same thing. I would have jumped in the car and followed this as far as I could.
I don't know what it was. This one was going so fast.
The journey ended less than 3 miles from where it began, on Farrington Highway in front of the Board of Water Supply building, after the object appeared to drop into the ocean.
Which, from the case files we've heard tonight, is exactly what is to be expected from a USO.
Oh, the land in the water, whatever it is.
She described it as being larger than a telephone pole and says she never heard it make any sound.
We called 911 if I have like one cop or somebody for come out and come check them out.
While officers were on scene, she says they spotted a second light.
My husband went look up and he seen the white one coming. The white one was smaller, was coming in the same direction as the blue one.
They lost sight of the object after it passed over a nearby mountain. This morning, we asked Honolulu police if investigators figured out what fell in the water. A spokesperson told us they didn't have any information. Meanwhile, officials from the FAA said they received a report from police Tuesday night about a possible plane down in the area, but had no aircraft disappear off radars and no reports of overdue or missing aircraft.
Makes it really hard to blame it on an aircraft when even the FAA is shaking their head going, yeah, no, we can't confirm that.
It's like a
UFO ball.
Although Mariah's had a couple days to think about it, she says she's still baffled by what she saw.
To this day, I don't know. If you guys can find out what it was, I'll let you know, you know what I mean?
Allison Blair, Hawaii News Now.
Thank you, Allison. What do you guys think it was? Something was filmed and was seen to go right into the ocean. A blue light that had no apparent cause or reason as far as aircraft goes, and it definitely didn't have a reason to be dipping into the ocean if it was a standard man-made aircraft. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that we present enough evidence in case files tonight to suggest that there is something going on in the lakes and oceans of this world? Do you think perhaps maybe there's an alien civilization that is living in and under our oceans? Or perhaps they're just here to check out what's actually going on? In the end, ladies and gentlemen, all you can do is apply a little common sense when you look at all the evidence, and you be the judge. We got to close it out. That's right, that's it for this episode of the Dark Wolf's Den Show for Wednesday, April 21st, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Ladies and gentlemen, the den may be closing, but don't you worry, the weekend fun is only just begun. That's right, we will reopen the den tomorrow, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, as we dig down deep into the topic of the third man factor. This is something that has only very recently come across my desk, but it turns out it's something that I actually heard about for quite a while. Just not under this name, and I'm sure you guys have too, and we'll find out what that is tomorrow. Thursday, April 22nd, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, right here on Ripon Common Sense Radio. Then on Friday, April 23rd, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, our network partner AJ the Ripon Rabbit comes on with a Ripon Rabbit Hole live show, and he'll take over for the rest of the weekend. That's right. On Friday night, he's going to be talking about Route 66. Get your kicks on Route 66. That's right. This is used to be a really popular drive to America, and it was definitely iconic, something that you do not want to miss out on. A nostalgic episode for sure. Then on Saturday, April 24th, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, AJ the Ripon Rabbit's going to be back with an episode on social distancing. I'm not a big fan of this. I'm sure most of you guys aren't either. And we're going to find out what AJ's got to say about it on Saturday, April 24th, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Then on Sunday, April 25th, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, our buddy AJ the Ripon Rabbit will be back one last time to round the weekend out. Right, that's right. He's going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, guys, and that, of course, is science. We all love science around here. I love to marry the science and the paranormal, because I just say the paranormal is science that hasn't been figured out yet. But what about the science that has been figured out? Our buddy AJ the Ripon Rabbit will be talking about the science of the science on Sunday, April 25th, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. And that's going to round out the weekend here on Ripon Common Sense Radio and RiponRabbitHole.com. Speaking of RiponRabbitHole.com, make sure you hop on over to the RiponRabbitHole.com and sign up for your VIP Backstage Pass. That's right. This is going to get you all of the amazing functions of the website over there at RiponRabbitHole.com, like the Down the Rabbit Hole section, our social media alternative area over there, as well as the 24/7 Backstage Lounge, my favorite hangout, where I'm going to go right after the show. And if you want to hang out with me, well, it's easy, you see. You go on over to the RiponRabbitHole.com, you sign up for the Backstage Pass, and you hop in to the 24/7 Lounge. That's right. And while you're over there, also make sure you check out our groups pages. That's right. We've got everything from the Dark Wolf's Den Show group over there, of course. We've got the Ripon Rabbit Hole live show group. We've got the Lucid Dreaming groups, the Mandela Effect, the International Mandela Effect Conference has a group over there, as well as a variety of other amazing things to choose from. So if you guys are interested in finding out and keeping up with what's going on at Ripon Common Sense Radio at all times, make sure you jump on over and get on that newsletter and sign up for your Backstage Pass. What newsletter, Jerry? Oh, I forgot to mention, when you sign up for that Backstage Pass, you are automatically signing up for our newsletter that comes out once a week on Wednesday, every Wednesday, as many times as we can help it anyway. Sometimes the server messes up, but we try to get them out every Wednesday with all the information of the wolf dens and the Ripon rabbit holes that'll be covered all weekend long right here on Ripon Common Sense Radio. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me tonight. I appreciate everybody being here with us. We're going to be back tomorrow to kick it off one more time. So ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Michael Musco, Chick Mandela Effect, Walt House, Tom Bayless, huge shout out, buddy, over at Red Shed Studios for doing this background music we use every week. Isn't it not amazing? AJ the Ripon Rabbit, everybody involved in Ripon Common Sense Radio. We thank you guys for being here, and remember, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, stay awake, but dare to dream. Good night, everybody. Howl! Yeah! That's right. Original music, Red Shed Studios, Tom Bayless. You rock, brother. Keep rocking. Oh man, I love that beat. And I love you guys very, very much. It's because of you guys we do this, and we could not do it without you. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. Good night, everybody.
Unlocked and into the dark. Some things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner. Is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner. Is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion. I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. I'm lost in the wonderland of just illusion, manifestation, or a dark